and value to that. Before I jump forward, I do want to just share a little bit about me. This is just a snapshot of who I am, but I am Dr. William Clark. I have a doctorate in strategic leadership from Regent University out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, and have a master's degree in leadership as well, finishing up a second master's in leadership, divinity and leadership. And so academically, I've been fortunate to kind of go down that path and achieve a number of goals there. Currently, I serve as the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Career Resources. And what that means is that I oversee Strive, and then I oversee a couple of projects that focus on earned income. Nonprofits are able to create businesses that can earn income. And that's where I spend a lot of my time. That's where my specialty is. That's what I do most of the day. That is focusing on business development, business opportunities for nonprofits, particularly for career resources. I also serve as the board chair of the Family Leadership and Empowerment Institute here based in Hartford. And we are focusing on solving multiple barriers for families in the greater Hartford region, making sure families becoming self-sufficient and sustainable. And beyond that, just to kind of capture my career in a nutshell, I've been in a nonprofit business for over 15 years. I do have for-profit experience as well, working in the insurance business, as well as running my own real estate company and consulting company. So I'm not just limited to the nonprofit world, but there is perspective that I do bring to the table that I think will show up a little bit today in our conversation. But I will say that I love the nonprofit world a lot. I've been in it for quite a long time. It is where I have found quite a bit of success and passion. And so it matters to me that this conversation is being had with all of you as you begin the journey of looking for your next job. Now, as we begin to talk about what it means to lead an organization, lead a nonprofit, operate a nonprofit, one of the questions that I love to ask people is, what do you define leadership as? How do you define leadership, and how do you describe it? And there are a ton of descriptions that people provide. People talk about telling people what to do. People mention it's about providing direction and all that good stuff. And I think that that has some merit and some applicability to how we understand leadership. But I think we probably need to go just a bit deeper in terms of defining leadership. And the reason why I want to start here in our talk is because as all of you enter into the workforce, become tax-paying citizens, contributing members of our community, and as the Strive team begins to enter into a new phase of their careers, defining leadership matters quite a bit. So as you're walking into a leadership role, whether it is truly a coordinator role, director role, senior manager role, or even if you're just a team member at the front lines, you in fact have the possession. You do possess what leadership is. You should execute on what leadership is, and you should not you shouldn't shy away from it because you don't have the appropriate title. But I want to make sure we define it appropriately so that you understand for this talk, and as you figure out how to apply it in your life, what in fact leadership is. And that's how we define leadership is, in my eyes, and as I researched it and applied it in many scenarios, is leadership simply is influence. It is the ability to get outcomes and influence outcomes from people, from individuals, from yourself, from systems, from organizations, from structures. It is the idea that you can get something out of nothing, no matter the circumstance or no matter what's going on. And when you look at leadership from that perspective, I think it does address something for us. And that is, leadership does not have anything to do with some of the traditional mechanisms we may think of. Leadership is not associated with bullying. Leadership is not associated with telling people what to do. Leadership is not associated with controlling people. I think those are things that people have observed as outputs of what certain leaders have done. And just because you're a leader in title and in position and in salary, that does not make you a leader. It's interesting when you look at the dynamics of your own family, look at how you grew up, and look at who were the true leaders of your own family. If you're doing an assessment of your family, typically you'll notice that the leader of the family is someone who has no money, someone who doesn't make the most money, someone who doesn't have the highest career trajectory or doesn't have a lot of success to boast of. The leader in a family is typically someone who has none of that stuff, but can get stuff done and influence outcomes on behalf of the family. And when you think about that, when you think about that real life scenario, when you think about how that manifests in your life, there has to be a recognition that leadership cannot be associated with only people who are of rank or people who have a title. Leadership is about influence. And it's important for folks like me, and it should be important for folks like you, to ensure that leadership exists in every level of the organization, and that everybody in the organization has some sort of buy-in and ownership to how we define success and how we achieve success. But I do want to ask you a question, like, where and how do we wield influence, right? We can wield influence, which is the definition of leadership, in a number of ways. We can wield influence by being the one that points people and leads people to the right direction. We can be the one that sets the tone, and we're out front, making sure there's headway for everyone who is following us. We can wield influence by being the puppeteer, if you will, the person who's pulling the strings, providing prescriptions for how people should perform or behave. This shows up in policies and procedures. You could be influential in that way. You could be influential in vision casting. Again, when you're doing all that big picture stuff, you are in fact a puppeteer, because everyone on the team is responsive to how you're moving the organization. Maybe not in a manipulative fashion, but maybe in a visioning fashion, as a visionary, as a prophet, if you will, someone who sees the future that is to come. We also wield influence by sharing our minds, by conveying our thoughts with people, by communicating what we think, by articulating our ideas. And as we do that, we begin to share our minds, and it begins to filtrate through the organization. You'll be surprised how many leaders are really good at sharing concepts, sharing their brain, coaching, if you will, and that thinking permeating throughout the organization. This is really effective in generating a ton of influence without trying to be possessive or controlling of other people and what they got going on. You also can be a leader by simply having impact, by creating pressure, by being the one that creates new momentum or resetting momentum, by being the person who creates opportunity for the whole team to move, maybe not in the same way, but in the same direction. And if you notice the image on the screen, once you create that pressure, once you create that impact, every ball is not going to have a lot of give in their movement or in their motion, but they are contributing to the overall momentum that is created because of the impact, because of the influence the leader is creating by being the first to create that impact. So when you think about all these options, I do ask you, like, how do you best show or display influence in your life? How do you best display influence in your career? For those of you who have a career already, those of you who are working, how does that work for you? And I think you should be thinking about that, because there is no one way to wield influence. Some people are more dynamic than others. Some people have greater capacity than others. Some people are able to make things happen much more fluidly than others. But then there are some of us who are just focused on impact. That's what we're really good at. Some of us are just focused on sharing our minds and sharing our ideas and letting others wrestle with it and come up with a collective better concept. Some of us are focused on influencing through prescription, policies and procedures, providing specific direction. Some of us are really good at wielding influence by just being the person people can see out front, by modeling behavior, by pointing to the outcome that is to be achieved. However it works for you, I want you to think about all these options. I want you to think about options I didn't mention. I want you to think about ways you work to display influence. And let me rephrase that. I want you to think about ways you display leadership, because it's going to matter whether you lead a nonprofit or a for-profit, etc. But I do want to leave this thought with you too, more than anything else. Leadership is needed in all career professions and at all levels of internal operations. Everyone in the team must be a leader. And I'm sharing this statement intentionally with you because it is a philosophy of mine that I deeply believe in. And as many of you graduate from Strive soon and you go out into the world to find your next job, if you haven't done so already, I don't want you to pursue that next job thinking, oh, I'm just doing this. or I'm just on this station, or what I'm doing is insignificant. No, 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 no. No matter what your job is, you are in fact getting ready to practice leadership. No matter how minor you think your position is, no matter how mindless you think your job is, you are getting ready to practice leadership. I can't tell you how many times I expect people of all stripes that I work with to express leadership, no matter what their role is. Whether you're a janitor or a secretary or a security guard, you don't think organizations need leaders in those positions? People who take their jobs seriously, people who are influential in the organization culture. Well, he's just a security guard. He doesn't do anything substantive to the organization. Let me argue against that point. Let me push back a moment. In big organizations, when you walk into a building, one of the first people you see before you see anybody else is a security guard. And if you have a bad interaction with a security guard before you walk into an organization or a building, it can literally ruin the interaction you really came to have. If you're going on an interview and you have a bad interaction with a security guard who is rude and disrespectful and has a scowl on his face, it can possibly create within you a bad mood and give you the wrong attitude as you get ready to meet, get this, the next person before you have the interview, and that is the secretary. And if she or he is in a bad mood, and if they are not exhibiting what the organization believes are leadership qualities, that in turn can impact you. Now, as you listen to that scenario, and some of you may be nodding your head and saying, you know what, I've been through that. I understand that. I just had that experience the other day. Let me flip this around. If you are the one who is the security guard, perhaps that's your next step. Maybe your next step is the admin support. Maybe your next step is to work on a CNC machine in a manufacturing facility. Maybe you're doing logistics in the warehouse. Maybe you're driving, utilizing your CDL to drive a commercial vehicle. Or maybe you're getting ready to interview with a nonprofit for a frontline job. If you don't exhibit leadership in your own role, how can that negatively impact the organization at large? And I need all of you to think about your own contributions to the culture of the organization. It is not incumbent only upon the leader to create that culture. He or she is important to setting that tone, don't get me wrong. But it is the people throughout the organization who actually execute that vision, who execute that culture, who makes that culture come alive. And when you are the polar opposite of that culture, you are detracting, distracting, and subtracting from the organization. And therefore, you're not exhibiting the leadership that I know that Devonna has shared with you over the past couple of weeks. This buffers my point. This is a org chart. Every organization has one. No matter who you are, no matter where you sit in the organization, no matter what your role is, you matter. No matter what your first job is going to be after coming out of prison, if that's the situation, you matter. Whether you decide to start a legitimate, viable nonprofit, I need you to know that you matter. And it matters that you exhibit leadership no matter where you sit on the org chart. If you begin to accept inferiority thinking or inferior thinking and say to yourself that because I'm not the one sitting at the top, because I'm not the one who can make the final decision, then I'm not important, I'm not a leader, Dr. Clark doesn't know what he's talking about, then you have missed the complete point. You have missed the idea of what I've been sharing over the past few minutes, and then you just missed everything Devonna just taught you over the past couple of weeks. The idea today is for you to embrace the fact that you do matter. Your contributions matter, no matter where you sit on top of the organization. It's easy to look at organizations as top-down institutions with org charts, with a CEO and frontline staff. It's easy to have that perspective. But I think that we lose sight of what organizations really look like in real time. Organizations look like this image on the screen. They are spider webs of people that emanate from various strands within an organization. And when you think about the fact that, yes, you are part of a particular web string, a string in the web, you are part of the web. And if you fall short, and if you begin to lose sight of your ability to hold down your lane, your job, your contributions, then you lose the opportunity to, in fact, be a contributing member of a team, of a web, of an infrastructure. I want to pause there for a moment and let you wrestle with that. I am arguing this point that you, in fact, matter. I am arguing the point that your contributions matter. I'm arguing the point that you, in fact, are, should be, can be, will be, always will be a leader. Nonprofit organizations, if you decide to work for one, we need more leaders standing in the gaps, performing well, performing at a level of excellence that is beyond expectation, meeting the needs of customers, meeting the needs of the leadership vision that's being set. You are a part of an ecosystem. Even if you don't see it, even if you're on the outskirts of this system, it doesn't matter. You are still a part of the system. And what you're doing, no matter if you're out here or if you're here or if you're there or if you're here or if you're part of the inner circle or if you are the center of the circle, it matters that you are part of the ecosystem. So as you embrace your role of a leader, the question you got to be asking yourself is, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I model this? What if I'm not leading a team and I'm just leading myself? Here's something I want you to think about. All leaders are called to do a couple of things. The first thing a leader is called to do is to build commitment, a culture of commitment, no matter where they work. Even if you are the first person people see in an organization, no matter if you are the security guard or if you are the secretary or the admin, you are the first line of defense for many customers. In fact, Devana, while she has a title of coordinator of the program at Waterbury, she is in fact the first line of defense for Marcus and I. When you saw her presentation, she was that first line of defense. That means her interaction with you mattered, and it matters. Her presentation has to be influential, impactful. It has to resonate with you in order for you to say, you know what? I'm going to make a commitment to do this program because I see the outcomes I can generate from that. That's her job. She is that front line of defense. But leaders are responsible for being courageous and modeling this behavior, if you will. But being courageous, having focus, showing respect of themselves and the people that they care about and that work for them, and being open, being completely open to ideas, being open to concepts, being open to the what ifs and the particulars of what could be. That's the role of a leader. And notice I haven't yet mentioned in this particular presentation that a leader is responsible for telling people what to do. Notice I haven't mentioned at all that a leader is responsible for being in control and being possessive of everything or being a micromanager. Didn't even mention it. The role of a leader is to usher in this type of thinking. The next job of a leader is to build competency and to exhibit and practice competency in their role. It's cool that we have a culture of performance, and it's cool that we have people who want to do right and they have the heart for the job. But we got to pay the bills. We got to earn the money. We got to get the grant. We got to, make sure people have their bills paid, right? In order to do that, we got to be good at what we do. So it's not enough for you to take this class with Devana and build the soft skills, which are critical to getting and keeping the job. You also got to be good at something. Everybody on the team, no matter who you are, top down, must be good at something, must be able to do something. And the leader, and I'm talking to everyone on this conference call, the leader must lead the way in showing competency, in exhibiting competency, in practicing competency. That means you got to constantly practice at what you do. You got to constantly work on what you're doing, no matter if it's on the clock, off the clock. What you do, what you're good at, should be consistent with your life every day. So in some cases, you maybe need to map out your competencies as an individual, maybe with your team. You should look at how your competencies impact your career and career trajectory. Maybe you should develop a training plan if you don't have the competencies that you want, or if you have competencies, you want to get better at it. Maybe you should develop a training plan. This is what leaders do. And it is my message to you that you ought to be working towards this, building towards this as you graduate Strive in the coming days. Now, to get to the point and bring this full circle, how do you lead and operate a nonprofit? And I think that's the question that I want to answer and leave with you today, because I do want to see some of you, if not all of you, consider a career in the nonprofit space, doing what Devonna does, being a case manager, being a recruiter, being someone who is interacting with clients, being someone who shows clients a different way. Many of you are in the process or have completed the journey of changing your life. And when you figured out how to change your life, then I'm pretty confident there are going to be other people coming behind you who are going to want to know the formula to successfully changing one's life. After dealing with what you dealt with, after being separated from your family, after struggling for so many years, when you figure it out, some people are going to ask you, Doc, how do I do that? And in fact, you can actually do this for a living working for a nonprofit. So how do you lead a nonprofit? How do you operate a nonprofit? Number one, it starts with leading yourself before you begin to attempt to lead others. You cannot influence a group of people. You cannot influence an entire organization. You cannot influence a culture. You cannot influence clients if you are not leading yourself first. So there are 3 key principles to leading yourself that I need you to write down. I need you to receive and digest. Number one, leading yourself begins with the mind. How you think, how you receive information, how you digest information, how you wrestle with information, how you envision your future, how you articulate after careful thought what you want to see happen in your organization, with your team, within your own self. Before anything can shift or change or adjust, the self leader says, I have to work on me first. So it begins with the mind. The second thing that has to happen if you're going to be an effective leader of yourself before you lead other people is actually executing whatever your mind has determined. Now, we can sit here all day, and I'm sure Devonna has done a number of exercises with you where you have spent time thinking and planning and plotting and envisioning a different future. You probably are pumped up and inspired after spending 2.5, 3 weeks with Devonna, and you think you can conquer the world. I actually believe that is true. I believe that all of our trainers have that capacity and have that effect. But at some point, when Strive graduation happens and it's over, you get the cake and you celebrate. You actually got to practice what Devonna taught you. And the actual practice and execution of what you've been envisioning in your mind is one of the hardest things to do. How do you convert mental energy into behavioral action or execution? It's hard. But I can give you one secret. And that one secret is it happens one step at a time. Don't feel like you got to accomplish everything Devonna said in one foul swoop. It's not going to happen. I guarantee you, you're going to be feeling good. You're going to get that job. And then within the next couple of weeks, the first couple of weeks of getting that job, there's going to be a coworker that says or done something that just gets on your nerves to no end. And when they pluck your nerve long enough, everything Devonna's taught you is going to go right out the window. It takes time to change and evolve, but you can do it one step at a time. So we mentioned that to lead oneself, you got to first adjust your mindset. Then number two, you got to actually execute The other thing I want to point out here before I go to the third point here is that no matter what execution looks like to you and for you, don't be upset. Don't try to copy what other people are doing. Don't try to create a pathway forward like everybody else. You are unique, you are different, you are special, and the way you execute may not look like everybody else's execution. So what? This is why Devana wanted to make sure to drive home the point that leaving folks behind that mean you no good is a healthy process we all have to go through. People will criticize your airplane. They will criticize the tactics and strategies that you are using to get a different life. It doesn't matter what the vehicle looks like, as long as it's good and it's healthy and it's right. Just execute one step at a time. And then lastly, I know I said execution can be hard, but I also find this to be hard for a lot of people too. And that is finding a connection point with the journey, finding joy in the journey, finding peace in the journey, being happy with every successful step you take, whether it's big or small. There are people in your life that will not celebrate the fact that you're graduating Strive. They will tell you that's insignificant, doesn't matter. And for you, as you navigate what it means to recapture life, recapture peace, recapture hope and joy, calmness, a future for you and your family, you're going to have to fight tooth and nail to remind yourself of why you started this journey in the first place. And when you remind yourself of that, then you also got to find happiness with the journey, enjoyment, excitement, satisfaction, peace with the journey. It may not look like everybody else's journey. People may laugh at you and talk about you and criticize you and snicker and all these things, right? It doesn't matter. As long as my plane can fly, I'm cool with that. As long as my plane can go the distance, I'm cool with that. As long as my plane can get me up in the air and off the ground and away from negativity, I'm cool with that. As long as my job keeps me out of trouble and keeps me focused and puts money in my pocket so I can take care of my responsibilities, I'm cool with that. And the more you become cool with the process, you'll begin to think about, well, if I was able to accomplish that, what else can I rework in my mind? What else can I envision as a future for myself and for my family so that I can create new opportunities of execution and begin that journey and that process of new growth, new levels of elevation, and finding connection points with that. All right. So the first step to leading a nonprofit organization is learning how to lead yourself before you lead others. The next step is developing successors, people who are going to step up next. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, leading a nonprofit by yourself is a no-go. Fake news is not real. You can't do it by yourself. You need a team. You need people who are going to have your back, who are going to help you execute the vision you have. And so in order for you to find successors and develop successors, you, my friend, you have to have a vision of the future. I mean, you got to see things that other people can't see, won't see, refuse to see. You got to see around the corner, up the street, around the block, and 5 years ahead of everybody else. What I spend time doing besides trying to create new businesses for CRI, trying to generate earned income for CRI, I also spend quite a bit of time envisioning what tomorrow looks like, what 6 months from now looks like, what 12 months from now looks like. What does 2 years from now look like for CRI, for Strive? What does 5 years from now look like for Strive? And as I begin to envision the future, then the other part of my job is to actually begin to lay in the foundation for that future to manifest. And this can be tricky because I got to do all that while not disrupting the current work the team is working on without disrupting their flow. So it becomes a difficult balance of maintaining the right now and building towards the future. And one of the most enjoyable moments that I get to have in my role is when everybody else gets to catch up with the vision I had 3 years ago. I love that moment. When people are saying, wow, this is cool. And I'm saying to myself, man, I thought about this 3 years ago. I started working on this 2.5 years ago. And we started laying the foundation 2 years ago. And we really started catching traction a year ago. And now what you're seeing as a manifestation is something that I've already manifested in my mind, in my eyesight 3 years ago. So in order to develop successors, you got to realize your own vision. This is critical because the next step and phase to realizing a vision is actually developing and selecting leaders of all types and styles. Just because I have a certain leadership style does not mean that is the appropriate style for the future of Strive and CRI. The future may require different style types, different approaches to accommodate an evolving future of this organization. Perhaps you have an autocratic style, but you realize the future is going to require someone with democratic style, or someone with a laissez-faire style, or someone with a transformational style, or someone with a transactional style, or someone with a skill-based style, or someone with a psychodynamic style. Right? All those styles have purposes and meaning for seasons within organizations. An organization that has the same leadership style forever will be stuck forever. And so as you are leading a nonprofit, and perhaps you're listening to me and saying, Doc, this is cool, but I want to lead a for-profit organization, or I want to build my own business. These principles are still the same. You want to survive and thrive. You want to grow. You got to find the next level of successors, people who are going to step up and who are going to lead the next phase of growth. And you got to embrace the fact that as you envision the future, you're going to need different leadership styles to fill in the gaps. Here's the third thing I'm going to share with you about leading a nonprofit. This is important to all of us on this call who are currently working in this space. We got to know our customer. We got to know who we dealing with. Who are we recruiting? What are we focused on? That means knowing the demographic of our clientele. How old are they? What's their gender? What's their income? What's their education? What's their family structure and life cycle? Do they have a faith system? And what's their socioeconomic status? I can tell you right now, Devonna could run a report and she can tell you exactly who she has served over the past 2.5 years. She can tell you average age, average gender, average income, average education level, family structure. We don't capture religion, but socioeconomic status. She can run that report, and she probably can tell you off the top of her head who her customer is. When she walks into the next place where she recruits, she knows exactly who her message is designed for. Now, that doesn't mean she doesn't capture new people along the journey. It doesn't mean that other people that don't fit the typical customer mold don't come to Strive, but she knows her bread and butter. At a statewide level, Marcus knows those same answers. Tim is developing that knowledge right now as we speak. And Drina's going through a closeout phase and is probably learning quite a bit about the demographics of the people that she never met before, but that came through the program. Same thing with Kiwan and Jahira. Same thing with Kate. That's for all of us. Knowing your customer means a lot because then it tells you who you're actually working for and who you're serving. And in order to know your customer, you're going to have to think like your customer. The reason why we track demographic data, if you're leading a nonprofit or if you're going to open up a for-profit or if you're going to open up a t-shirt business or whatever the case may be, you need to know your customer so that you can market to them, so you can sell to them, so you can position your product to them. You may not think of the nonprofit world as a product that's being positioned, but in fact, Devonna is engaged in marketing and in sales and product development, product delivery, customer service, fill in the blank. I don't know. She manages a whole shop. She manages a whole operation. She pays rent. She has bills to pay. She has payroll to meet. All of that stuff goes into running a nonprofit, even the one you guys are a part of right now in Waterbury. It's like running a regular business. But if she doesn't know anything about her customers, then she can't think like her customers. If she doesn't know the type of person that's walking in the door, how will she know how to position what she's selling for their benefit? It's impossible. And so just because you're working for a nonprofit, it does not mean you don't need to know that information. On the contrary, you must know this information. You must memorize this information. You must master this information. Next, you got to make sure your customer is satisfied. Like, how do you know that you're doing a good job? How do you know what you're selling is working? How do you know what you have to offer is of value, is of meaning, has purpose, has the ability to contribute impactful results for your customer? Man, I mean, if you don't know your customer and what makes them happy or angry with your product, you will be out of business. Even for a nonprofit, no matter how good your heart is, no matter how much you care, no matter how much you believe in what you're doing, if you don't know the satisfaction level of your customer, you're going to struggle. So here's the wrap up here. You want to lead a nonprofit? You want to lead an organization? You want to become a manager, a supervisor, or whatever your next level is? These are the three principles. This is the formula. Lead yourself first. Don't be insecure about other leaders coming up behind you. Develop the next leaders up behind you, the next man up. Have that mentality. And know your customer. All of that matters to your success. All of that will always matter to your success. And I believe that if you couple what I share with you today with what you've learned from Devonna and coming back to Devonna to get ongoing coaching, she should have given you a phone number that you can call and or text. She will respond. If you take advantage of that, I believe all of you have a huge opportunity to not only work in the nonprofit business, which I encourage you to do, but all of you will have a huge opportunity to take advantage of career pathways that are lying ahead for you and waiting for you to come and grab.